Hey guys, Mr. Pokke here, back with another video. So I'm finally back from overseas and just in time to rush out this pretty comprehensive Pokke Academy video, which is on effect hit rate and resistance. Literally just got back and showered, unpacked my stuff, and I was working on this video the entire time. So I'm glad to have at least be able to publish it right after Silver Wolf's release. So there's that. But before we actually get into that, I just want to announce this very nice announcement that I have. I think some of you guys who have been following my community posts, I think you all would have known that I've been in the works of making a Discord channel for I think the past 1 month. Granted, it could have been released earlier, but I just wanted to make sure that everything can start running once I actually got back from overseas. So without further ado, this is my little pet project, which is Pokke's Village, paying homage to Monster Hunter Freedom Unite game, which is my very first Monster Hunter game. Yeah, but as you guys can see, we've more or less got all the things that I want to get sorted out already at this point. So I will now be releasing this to everybody, and yeah, I hope that you guys can just come around and just chat, and like we have a few people already here because they're basically my friends and we're testing out how this server was running. So for most things, we've already set them up, and you guys can just come in and take a look. And yeah, we've got some pretty nice resources. And if you guys need like some math, like for example, there's also some math calculations with my very good friend here, which is the expert in math, and a lot of times I consult him about it. But yeah, with that out of the way, this is basically my Discord channel, which is Pokke's Village. And from now onwards, I'll just be dropping a link in my description so that anytime you guys want to just hop on, let's just hope that this community can grow even larger, and it helps me communicate with you guys much easier on Discord instead of through YouTube comments. Yeah, so without further ado, let's just jump straight into today's content, which is effect hit rate and resistances. I just think this is an excellent time to be talking about this particular topic because everybody who is pulling Silver Wolf ideally wants to know how much effect hit rate does she really need if you plan to run her as a debuffer. And you should run her as a debuffer if you're not going for the E6 route, which is turning her into a DPS. But for most players who are running her as a debuffer, you will more or less want to know how effect hit rate and resistance work. And I think this video is an excellent time for me to just go ahead and briefly go through how everything runs with Silver Wolf, as well as any other future debuffers such as Pella or even Luca, like the Lightcon unit, or any like even Kafka, this kind of stuff. So I think, yeah, let's just get into it. So first things first, to understand effect hit rate as well as resistance, you just need to understand the basic formula, which is the effect probability of your skills landing is equivalent to your base chance of your ability multiplied by 1 plus your unit's effect hit rate multiplied by 1 minus enemy effect resistance, then finally multiplied by 1 minus enemy debuff resistance. Now, debuff resistance, this is a very interesting line. I'll go into this a little bit more in the next slide, but for most of the time, you can just ignore this because very little enemies actually have this. So let's just touch that on later on. But for the first part, just on the base chance, essentially your base chance of the unit's ability landing. So this is a level 1 Trace Silver Wolf, and there is a 75% base chance for her E ability to land on the target. So in this factorial over here, this is going to be 75%. And as you guys know, different units have different base chance for across all their abilities, so this is just going to change according to that. So it's a very straightforward base chance. For effect hit rate, is essentially the stat that you see from your unit when you're gearing them with like your red main stat, your sub stats, all this. They're all effect hit rate. So it basically increases the chance of applying debuffs, and a high effect hit rate will result in a higher chance. But the descriptions on star rails in-game, like this, I took them from the in-game screenshots, effect hit rate and effect resistance, but they don't really explain the math behind it. They don't really tell you the formula, and you really need to go and deep dive to find out what the formula really means, because this just tells you higher hit rate means higher chance of applying, which doesn't really say anything to the player because you don't have a numerical value on it. So how much hit rate do you really want? Right, so it's kind of thing is kind of hard to say. So I'm going to say that with this video, you guys will probably understand how this entire thing works very easily. So just know that for effect hit rate, this just goes into this part over here. So for example, if you have 100% hit rate on your unit, this is going to be 1 plus 100%, and 100% is essentially 1. So it's going to be 1 plus 1 equals to 2. And for effect resistance, which is the decreasing the chance of the enemies getting hit by a debuff or your team getting hit by a debuff, so it's going to be 1 minus your effect res. So for example, if the enemy has 40% effect res, it's going to be 1 minus 40%, which is going to be 60% or 0.6. So this is essentially the basic formula, right? Right, next, so let's just get into debuff resistance. I know this looks like a pretty long wall of text, but honestly, it's not that crazy, because the main thing you guys just need to know is they are just a special resistance that's only applicable to, right now we have is boss units such as Japat or Pokke. You can see this is all debuff resistance. So when they have this debuff resistance, this essentially just adds on another multiplier to the effect probability formula. So you just add on another chance, right? So this is why you realize that if you play Simulated Universe or even MOC, you realize that Pokke will never ever be frozen, because her frozen resistance, which is a debuff, is at 100%. So, because this is at 100%, it's going to be 1 minus 100%, which is going to be 0. So, it doesn't really matter if you have 1 million hit rate, right? Anything multiplied by 0 is going to be 0. And that's why this is how debuff resistance works. It just adds on another multiplier to the thing. You just need to understand this as this. But for most units, as you guys can see over here, they will not have the debuff resistance at all. And therefore, it will not be a thing for them. You just really need to know for some of the units, they just have this additional line. And yeah, that's essentially how debuff resistance works. Right, another thing to note is debuff resistance only works on that specific debuff. It doesn't work on like all debuffs, right? For example, your enemy effect RES, it works on all debuffs, but the debuff resistance is only particular to that one debuff. So example, if you see over here, a Silver Wolf's weakness implant is neither an ice RES, it's not an ice ability, nor is it a frozen ability. So Pokke and Japat will not gain this additional debuff RES multiplier against Silver Wolf's weakness implant. So that is essentially how it works, right? Very straightforward. From the above formula, which was this, your effect probability formula, which is this, this doesn't really, I guess this is good for you to understand, like you understand how effect probability works based on your hit rate as well as enemy effect resistance. But there's a much simpler formula that is much more valuable to players, which is finding out how much EHR do you need, because your base chance, you can't really be changed, and your enemy effect resistance also can't really be changed. So the only thing that you can change as a debuffers is essentially how much effect hit rate you can give them, right? So we want to find out how much EHR do you need. So from the previous formula, right, we just divide the stuff a little bit and move them around. You're gonna get this line over here, which is 100%, because you want your hit rate to be at 100%. If you go over 100%, like 110%, 120%, it doesn't like make you hit your effects any higher. 100% is the max. So this would what we're gonna be working with. 100% divided by your base chance, divided by your 1 minus enemy effect resistance, and divided by your 1 minus enemy default resistance. Then the whole thing you minus 1. Because yeah. So it's very useful when you're planning out exactly how much EHR you want to get from your relics, tracers, like and eidolons. And to make this even simpler, right, we'll just take enemy effect resistance at its highest. And right now, after, I don't know if you guys know, but there's actually been a nerf to across all enemy effect resistance. And right now, as of 1.1, enemy's effect resistance, even at level 90 units, like such as Pokke, is the highest at 40%, right? So all enemy, the highest enemy effect resistance they can get is 40%. So for lower level mobs such as those elite bosses and whatever, or like minions, this is even lesser than 40%, like 20, 30, like, or even 0%, right? So, but we always want to play the game at its highest difficulty. So you want to just account for the highest effect RES the enemy can have, which is going to be 40%, right? So that's number one. And number two, we will also not account for debuff resistance, since this is very niche, as mentioned just earlier. It's only applied to very, very little boss targets. And because they are not an all-encompassing universal RES, right? It's only to that specific effect. So just to make things easier for us and don't be like extremely targeted to that one particular boss, we're just going to completely remove debuff RES since it's niche. So from this, we can account that the effect hit rate needed for all our units to hit 100% chance, right, is actually just 5 over 3 divided by our base chance minus 1, right? It's a super straightforward formula. And an example, right, your Silver Wolf's E base chance is at 85% after you level it up a little bit. So your effect hit rate for Silver Wolf to land her E, which is a weakness implant, at 100% chance is going to be 5 over 3 divided by 85% minus 1, which is going to give you 0.96078. And this translates into Silver Wolf needs 96% effect hit rate to have a 100% probability of proccing her weakness implant against most enemies. As long as they have 40% RES and no debuff RES, then if you hit 96% EHR, she's 100% going to hit her weakness implant. Right, super straightforward formula. Now, To show you guys an even more in-depth example, so this is for those players that want to know like exactly how this works and what happens if you like overcap on your effect hit rate, right? So for example, if you are using Silver Wolf against an enemy with 40% effect res, like I mentioned just now, no debuff res, your base chance is 85%, and you manage to get 100% effect hit rate from your relics, main stabs, eidolons, light coins, or whatever, right? So based on our very early formula, which is this, your effect probability is gonna become 85% multiplied by 1 plus 100%. Which is going to be 2, multiplied by 1 minus 0.4, which is going to be 0.6, multiplied by 1 minus 0, because you have no debuff rest, so it's going to be multiplied by 1. This is going to end up with 102%, right? And that is too much effect hit rate. You have too much effect hit rate since you're above 100% probability of landing effect. And as such, as mentioned earlier here, 96% effect hit rate would be sufficient, as shown previously, right? So with that being said, how does this change if the enemy's effect rest is reduced? Right. So for example, if enemy's effect rest right now is at 40%, and this gets reduced to 30 or even 20%, how does this change the effect hit rate that we need? Do we reduce effect hit rate by an equivalent amount, such as if the enemy minus 20% effect rest, do we just minus 20% effect hit rate? Like for example, if we are against the enemy with 20% effect rest, do we just run 96 minus 20, which is 76%? The answer is no. You do not just straight up minus 20%, and I'll show you guys exactly how strong reduction towards enemy effect rest is in this little short example here. Right, so the power of reducing effect rest. From the previous formula of finding out how much effect hit rate that we need, which is this over here, you can see that a reduction in effect rest results in an even higher reduction of effect hit rate needed, since effect rest is a denominator of the division formula. Right, what I mean by denominator, which is this little button, which is this little thing over here, right? So effect hit rate needed at 40% rest is 5 over 3 divided by base chance minus 1. This 5 over 3 is derived from 100% divided by your 1 minus enemy effect rest. And previously it was at 40%, so 1 minus 0.4, which is 0.6. But if your effect hit rate needed at 20% rest, this is going to become 1 minus 0.2, which is 0.8. So this becomes 5 over 4 divided by base chance, right? Your denominator effectively increased. And if you take a look at the exact math behind it, so if you take an example over in the previously, like your Silver Wolf's E base chance is 85%, you can see that at 5 over 4 divided by 85% minus 1, you now only need 47% effect hit rate to land your Witness Implant with 100% probability, right? This is a massive 49% reduction in terms of effect hit rate needed as compared to the previous 96%. A simple minus 20% effect rest went from 96% EHR needed to only a mere 47%, right? So this is why Silver Wolf's E2 has such a huge value, because it effectively more than halved the EHR you need on your debuffer, right? Okay, in this case it's specifically Silver Wolf, but this just goes to show how strong any sort of effect that reduces enemy effect rest is. So to summarize, in turn-based games, landing your debuffs as a debuffer is crucial, especially if your team is not strong enough to one-hit KO an enemy. Because if you can one-hit KO an enemy, right, technically landing your debuff or not at the first turn doesn't really matter, because you're gonna kill it in one turn, right? So if you don't kill it in this first turn, you can just reset and go for it and kill it in the next turn as long as you land it. But this is really for wolves. For 99% of the player base, if you do not land your debuffs and over the period of like 8, 9, 10 turns, the entire debuffer unit's core feature is completely not utilized. And this is way more punishing than a DPS not having enough crit. Because if your DPS misses a crit, at least you still do damage, right? Like for example, if your crit does like 50k damage, you miss your crit, maybe you only do like 20k, but that is still 20k damage. Whereas if a debuff does not land, like for example, if your Silver Wolf's Witness Implant does not land, her entire ability is wasted. You basically just wasted her skill points just to deal like a little bit more damage and generate a little bit more energy, but the whole breadth is not there, right? And as such, the priority stat for all debuffers, right, not just Silver Wolf, like for Pella, for Kafka, all these kind of debuffers, should always be effect hit rate. And then you follow it up by speed, unless you're running a DPS Silver Wolf such as E6, but we won't talk about it in this video. So, as per from our last slide, you can see that Silverwolf's E2 is an insane QOL feature, as it more than halves the EHR required for her to hit 100% effect probability on her Winner's Implant. And in the future, with the same mindset, any ability that can reduce an enemy's effect res should always have value amongst debuffers, right? So such as your Kafka DOT teams, right? Any sort of like special effect that can just reduce enemy res and allow Kafka to proc land her dots with like a way higher chance, it's always going to be valuable. Now, that being said, the value of Silverwolf's E2, it will gradually decrease over time once you roll better and better effect hit rate on your relic subs, right? Because eventually, once you hit 96% effect rate or whatever kind of stuff, then this effect doesn't really matter that much because your effect rate is that high. Right, so this is just a really short video, and I hope you guys managed to understand exactly how AHR and resistance works. And if there's any questions, feel free to drop by my Discord and just shoot it over there. So with that, hope you guys all the best for your Silverwolf pulls, and take care.